Hello, I'm Jane Hutch and welcome to 1+1, where my guest is singer-songwriter Missy Higgins.
I'm all for believing.
Missy shot to fame as a 17-year-old when she was discovered by Triple J Radio, then signed by a recording company before finishing school. In her 16-year career, she's won multiple awards with album and song sales in the millions. In the past, Missy's music seemed to define the pain of what it means to be human. But now, married with a young son, her focus has shifted to the state of the world.
You can hear me now. Won't you open up your arms towards the sea?
And for the first time, she's appearing in the stage musical Miracle City at the Sydney Opera House. Missy Higgins, welcome to 1+1. It's great to see you.
Thank you, nice to be here.
Missy, everyone knows you as a singer-songwriter. You're about to add performer in a musical to your repertoire. When you're sort of preparing for a performance, how do you focus yourself for that?
To be honest, I'm not one of those people that really has a routine where I meditate or do anything regularly. It's just I like actually distracting myself before I go on stage because I do get a little bit nervous. So if I'm just hanging out with people laughing, that's the best way for me to be before I go on stage.
Do you remember the first time you were drawn to the sounds of a piano?
Probably when my dad was playing piano growing up. The sound of piano was always kind of wafting through the house. Then when I started playing piano, we all used to kind of play for each other and listen to each other, and so it was this really nice kind of, musical communication that we did through the piano, which was really lovely.
You grew up in a fairly comfortable household. I believe your dad likes to climb mountains. Your mum ran a childcare centre, you had a brother and a sister. Why were you so keen to go to boarding school?
My older brother and sister went to boarding school and they loved it, and I basically wanted to do anything that they wanted to do. So I was a really independent kid, and I went to a primary school with not many other girls in my class, and I just wanted more friends and more things to do, and I don't know, a bigger social life, I guess. And I just thought of it all as a big adventure, going to boarding school.
And so when you went to boarding school, obviously your musical lessons continued and your growth in music continued. Did you have dreams of making albums and performing in front of people?
I didn't really have any dreams about recording my own music, but I had dreams about being a performer and singing in front of thousands of people. I used to fantasize about it all the time.
Really?
Yeah, but in my mind it was just singing jazz songs or cover songs, because that's what I started out doing. I didn't realise that I would be able to write my own songs. So it wasn't until I was about 15, 16 that I started writing and singing my own singer-songwriter kind of music.
Wow. So when you were writing songs, were they about your own emotions or stuff that you saw around you?
I think I've always written songs that were very confessional. Like one of the first songs I wrote, All for Believing, which ended up on my first album, was about my first boyfriend, who I think I was 15 or 16 at the time. So that was a very emotional experience for me because that was my first love. So most of my songs are very personal.
And I'll kiss you.
I think you must have a great sense of bravery about you, because there was no way I would have told or even written about the sentiments of my first love. Was there a sense, did you have a sense that you were kind of putting your heart on your sleeve at the time?
I don't know, I think when you're a teenager going through something as powerful as your first love, it completely consumes you, you know, and all I could think about was processing that, you know, and I didn't have any other way of channeling it. So my mode of processing emotions at that time was just playing piano and singing and locking myself in a room for hours on end and just making music. So it just came naturally, like writing in your diary, I guess. It came naturally for me to write a song about it. I didn't think that it would be recorded and put on an album one day.
Was that the one that your sister sent to the Triple J Unearthed competition, or?
Yeah, that's the one that it ended up winning Triple J Unearthed. So yeah, so one of my first songs ended up being the thing that started my career.
I'm all for believing if you can reveal.
Was that frightening to have that level of exposure from a girl locking herself away in a room and playing piano?
I think in the back of my mind I knew that there was something going on, and I knew that I could express myself in a way that people seemed to respond to. In the little school concerts that I'd played and in my music class, people seemed to really like what I did. So yeah, I think there was a part of me that almost felt like it was the next step in a weird way.
And so when, I think halfway through year 12, you were signed up by a production company, and you knew, in a sense, that, you know, you weren't going to have to submit 1 million applications for a job somewhere. Was that a level of freedom for you to have that contract?
Yeah, I mean, when I was in year 12, I was very stressed out about what I was going to do once I finished school, and what I was going to apply for in uni, because all I knew was that I wanted to do music. I didn't have any other, and I knew that I loved writing, but apart from that I didn't know what I would want to do when I was older apart from sing. So when I got a record deal, that took me off the hook, and my dad got off my back because he used to say, "Oh, you'll have to go to uni and at least get, you know, an arts degree, and then you can figure out what you want to do. You need some sort of backup in case music doesn't work." And as soon as I got my record deal, he was like, "Okay, maybe you don't have to go to uni yet."
In a Women of Letters event in 2011, you spoke of something that you called your turning point, which was your experience of depression. You said that you were thankful for that. Can you explain why?
I was thankful because at that point, and I was still in high school at the time, I didn't have a name for how I was feeling. And I also hadn't realised that it was something hereditary that ran in my family.
Really?
Yeah, so my dad really opened up to me once I had that episode at school where I kind of just collapsed and was put into hospital and diagnosed with, severe depression. So he opened up and said, you know, this has run in my family for a long time, and I'm on medication for it, and it really helps me. And just to have someone say, I feel the way that you feel, and I've been through what you're going through, and it is possible to get help and to get treatment, was a massive relief for me, because I felt very lost.
Had you felt that kind of isolation about, you know, your depression for a while?
I mean, I always felt a bit isolated, I guess, in school. I always felt as though I was just a lot different from everyone else, and I couldn't really figure out why. I felt much more introverted, and I felt like I processed the deeper things in life for much longer than everyone else did. You know, I got stuck on certain things and couldn't get out of them. So so to finally have a potential way out of that, or at least someone kind of reaching out their hand to me, was a real life-changing moment.
You had experienced postnatal depression after the birth of your son. Was that something, in a sense, you were prepared for, knowing that you'd had depression? Yeah,
and I think my postnatal depression was not nearly as bad as a lot of stories I've heard. I mean, I was really prepared for it, because I'd heard if you have a history with depression, you're much more likely to get postnatal depression. So I was, really prepared for it, and so was my husband, and we kind of talked about it a lot, and my dad was constantly calling asking if I was okay, and that really helped, you know, to be conscious of what was happening, even though it was hard. I think that helped me get out of it reasonably quickly.
A lot of people would say that, you know, given the life you've had, really thrust into the limelight, I suppose, at 17, and that's a bit short of 20 years now. The times that you felt you've had to kind of back away from all of that and be on your own and kind of rediscover yourself, what is it that you've gone in search of, do you think?
I mean, I had a bit of a existential crisis after my second album, when I'd forgotten who I was without music, and I suddenly realised that if I couldn't write songs anymore, I didn't know who I would be, and I didn't know what I would do, and I would have no self-identity without it. So I freaked out because I was having a huge kind of writer's block at the time, and I went in search of who I was without music, I guess. I went to uni for a bit, and I went travelling. I did all the cliche things. I went to India.
Did you actually stop playing music for yourself?
Well, it lasted a few years, and I actually rented a little room above a flower shop in the northern suburbs of Melbourne, and put my piano in there and just used to go in there for hours at night and just play by myself. But it was very kind of cyclical, instrumental kind of music, where I would just kind of get into this trance, and there'd be nothing too vulnerable about it. I wasn't expressing myself in any way vocally. I was just playing these loops on piano, and somehow that was the only thing that I could do. I didn't feel like I could express myself anymore, like I had nothing to say.
What do you think restored your sense of meaning?
Taking a few years off after just touring constantly for a few years, and eventually I was asked to do a tour in America called Lilith Fair, which is this Sarah McLachlan all-female tour that they put on, and I was such a fan of Sarah McLachlan's, I couldn't say no, even though I'd kind of sworn to myself I wasn't doing music anymore. So I said yes and went over to be a part of that, and all these feelings of gratitude kind of came flooding back, like I'd never had before actually, because I realised that people had come to see me who'd been following me for years and who had really missed me while I was away, and my music really meant something to them, you know, and that was so humbling, because I realised it wasn't just for me, you know, my music was for other people as well, and we were kind of all in this together, and maybe music is just what I do, that's my role on earth. Maybe I didn't need to find something more or something, you know, more meaningful. Maybe it didn't get more meaningful than me writing songs and people, you know, adopting them.
What a fabulous discovery.
Yeah, it was really nice. It was one of those classic things where you have to walk away from it to realise, you know, that you need it and that you really cherish it.
I was listening to Sting talking about creativity, and he said something about, what have I done to offend the gods that they would abandon me so? Because I think he had like a 10-year stretch of writer's block. And he said, is the gift of songwriting taken away as easily as it seems to have been bestowed? And I wonder whether you have any thoughts on, you know, how the words and the music are either, you know, are they put into you or do they come from you?
I mean, it's kind of halfway. I've thought about it a lot, and I don't think that it just comes from the sky and you're just a complete channel. But although when it happens well, and on a good day, it definitely feels like that. But I think it's a matter of letting yourself go and almost switching off your brain so it's just pure instinct. I think it's a matter of letting your subconscious express itself creatively and trying as much as possible to switch off the analytical part of your brain. Because I know when I'm in a place where I'm overanalyzing everything and I'm scared and I just really want to write a hit song, that's when it's least likely to come. So if I'm relaxed and just feeling whatever I'm feeling and just letting it come, that's when I end up writing a song that sounds genuine and real.
Last year you released a beautiful song after the death of the small boy Aylan Kurdi on the Turkish beach, O Canada.
He was carried from the water by a soldier.
People hadn't heard an awful lot from you until that song surfaced. Was that something that really grabbed you in the spur of the moment and you couldn't kind of get the thought out of your head?
Well, when I saw the photo of Aylan Kurdi, I was devastated for days, and I definitely couldn't write anything straight away. But the more I thought about it, I thought, I've got to do something. I felt so useless, and I felt like I felt a huge shame about what our government was doing and how they were treating these poor people like criminals when they just wanted a safe place to live and they wanted to protect their children. So I thought, I want to write a song about this, and I think I need to just write their story, you know, not try to enforce my own opinions too strongly on it. Just write a story, because that's all that needs to happen. People need to just know that these people are just like us.
Oh, Canada, if you can hear me now, won't you open up your arms towards the sea?
You were a pretty new mother, I think, when that event occurred. Do you think motherhood makes you feel things and write things in a more visceral way?
I think motherhood has definitely switched me on to certain things I wasn't completely switched onto before. I mean, when I saw that photo, I couldn't help but think of my own child, and I couldn't help but think if that was me in another life, I would have done the same thing to try and protect my children from this war-torn country that they were fleeing. So I think that the thing that's happened to me as a mum is that I now see every little boy as my own boy, you know, and I see every man as somebody's son, which is a line in the song. So there's a sense of empathy now that is really painful, but is definitely evident since the birth of my son.
With the body of Aylan being laid upon the sand, tell me, how do we live with that?
Next year you have a new album coming out. It's the first album in about 3 or 4 years for you. I understand that the album contains ideas about climate change, aliens coming to Earth and seeing what we've done, Donald Trump, mass shootings in the US. I mean, we've just come through another terrible, terrible mass shooting. Do you feel this is feeding into your repertoire in a sense? Do you have to write about these things?
Well, I was in America during the shooting in Orlando at the nightclub, so that's what one of the songs is about. And I definitely felt like I had to write about that because it had just happened, and there was this real sense in the air of again, helplessness that the government wasn't doing anything about gun control over there. And everyone I talked to was just at a loose end, saying, I don't understand why they keep letting this happen. So I guess, I mean, I always just write what's on my mind, and during the making of this album, I was reading a lot of post-apocalyptic literature.
Really?
Yeah. I got really obsessed with, especially climate apocalyptic literature. I mean, Naomi Klein, This Changes Everything, I read that first, and that's obviously non-fiction about climate change. And then I somehow got onto this cli-fi literature and became a bit obsessed with the end of the world, and the fact that I'd brought my child into an environment that is just declining and what have I done, and it brought up these huge feelings of guilt in me, and then I realised I had to deal with that some way. So a lot of the songs on this album are putting myself at the end of the world in different scenarios and creating a narrative around that. And then some of the songs are about, you know, told from the future, about looking back to now and how we feel about everything that we did to the earth, and questioning our motives. So a lot of really big questions about death and time and responsibility.
Seems like you're in a totally new era.
Yeah. I mean, in the past, a lot of my songs have been relationship based,
Doesn't that hit too close to home?
which is easy when you're going through a lot of relationships and a lot of breakups and falling in love, because there's so much beautiful, visceral kind of inspiration in those feelings. But I guess now, having a family and I'm in this committed relationship that is not tumultuous at all, I find that I'm not wanting to write about it so much. I'm wanting to write about the other things that I'm focused on.
Do you listen to your own music?
No way! Sometimes it comes on accidentally, you know, when I've got my computer on random and I'm like, oh God, turn it off, turn it off!
Really?
Yeah, my husband listens to my albums all the time in his car though, which is really cute.
You've been in the industry a while, and the way music is made has changed so vastly. Do you kind of borrow from what's around at the time, or do you say, this is Missy's style, I'll stick to the way Missy's traditionally done this?
I try not to think about it to that extent. Usually I just want to make music that I want to listen to. So it depends what I'm listening to at the time and how my personal tastes have changed. This album is definitely a step in a new direction for me, because I've worked with different producers and there's a kind of a slightly electronic programmed sound, which is definitely kind of the sound of the moment, but we've tried to do something new with it, and I think what makes it different is that it's a mixture between my style and a very modern sound. So I think it's a definite departure for me without it being ingenuine in a way. That's what I'm hoping for anyway.
So you've got the album, you're performing in a musical. I mean, these are new steps, these are new directions for you. Is there a conscious effort to challenge yourself?
Yeah, I mean, doing this musical was very scary for me, because I've never danced before and I haven't had much experience acting. So I've always had this thing in the back of my head where I can't say no, and I feel like if I'm scared of something, I really should do it. That's led me down some pretty interesting paths in the past. But this was something that I really wanted to do, because I knew that it would be hard, but I knew that it would be a really fun experience.
So you're not afraid to step out of your comfort zone?
No, I'm very afraid, but it's a good kind of afraid, you know. The good thing about doing a musical is that I know that I can do the singing part of it. So I've at least got like a third of it down, and then there's just the acting and the dancing. And my character Bonnie May is really interesting too. She's a single mum who's kind of lived in a trailer park, and she's been a drug addict, and her daughter has been taken away from her by child services. So she's had a really tough life, but she's found God, and she has a very beautiful personal connection to God, and she's an incredible musician. So it's a very interesting kind of gritty character.
You're an atheist, I understand. So how did you manage to see that part of her that loves God?
Well, I think everyone has some sort of faith. I mean, I have a faith in the greater kind of, I don't know, energy of the universe, that everything will be okay in the end. I guess I worship music in a way. That's my
church.
That's my church, yeah, the music venues are my churches. And I can allow myself to get into that real state of reverence when I'm singing and playing music. And writing songs for me is is, I don't know, it's kind of a form of prayer, I guess, because I do feel like I'm channeling something higher, and it's my own personal relationship with that thing, you know. But I also feel like nature and the environment is a sort of God to me, because I feel like nature is really in charge. I think if anything is in charge of where we're going or what we do, it's nature, and I think that nature in the end will have its final say.
We're nearly at the end. I just wanted to ask, what's something that makes you feel grounded?
Definitely being with my little boy. I have one of those brains that is just constantly like spinning around on top of my head, and definitely prone to overthinking things. And when I'm playing with him, I have to be completely in the moment, and I've got a higher purpose, I guess, because my role now is to keep him alive and teach him things, and, you know, just nurture him into the world. So it's a beautiful, very meditative experience playing with my little boy.
What inspires you, Missy?
Lots of things inspire me. When I hear music that is really original and really brave, and at the moment I'm really into kind of political music, because I think that is the bravest thing of all in this climate today. More and more people are less inclined to speak out, you know, for fear of being cut down on social media or just music that isn't afraid to be torn down and isn't afraid to be judged, and just declares what it's there for.
And what nourishes you?
What nourishes me? Home time. I think I've spent so many years touring and travelling, and I still do quite a lot of that. So when I'm at home with my family, or just alone in my garden and just having some quiet time and just doing really simple things like the washing. One of my favourite things to do is to fold washing. There's something really domestic about that, and I really cherish those domestic moments.
Okay, so send in your washing, everyone.
Yeah. Actually, there's a little bit too much washing these days with a toddler.
Missy Higgins, it's been such a great pleasure. Thank you for speaking with me on 1+1.
Thank you for having me.
That was the singer-songwriter Missy Higgins. You can find 1+1 on iView. We have a website where you can watch previous episodes, and you can contact me on Twitter and Facebook. I'll be back here next time. See you then.